Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And okay, you can hear me, great. Good morning and welcome to the February CDTC Active Transportation Advisory Committee meeting. My name is Jess Bonus and I am the Director of Regional Planning here at CDTC. We'll go around the table here in the conference room to do introductions, and then I will read off the participants online. So we'll start over here.
Linda Bonderheide, Rensselaer County.
Ivan Vamos, New York State Bicycle Coalition.
Martin Daly, CDRPC.
Mohammed Ibrahim, CDPC.
Great. So online, I have Tom Benware, Dave Wooden, Harry Ward, Ed Brennan, Jim Moore, Ethan Warren, Jennifer Hogan, Peter Knudsen, Christina Akey, John Scavo, Ben Luke, Chris Alfonso, Valerie Dean, Chaim Simon, Kathleen Bell, Alexandra Barr, Dan Peary, Megan Fennell, Charles Welge, Ed Davidson, and then there's a 518 84 something, I can't see number.
Does it end in 88?
No,
There's a three.
83.
that ends in 83. Does anyone who belongs to that number want to introduce themselves? Okay. All right, did I miss anybody?
Jim Moore just get in.
Oh, Jim was there. Okay, so happy Valentine's Day to everyone. I thought I would use two active transportation appropriate Valentines for for today's agenda. So hope you enjoy whether or not you like to celebrate Valentine's Day. So our feature presentation today is going to be from Carrie Ward from CDTC on ADA transition plans and data collection. So Carrie, if you want to take over, just let me know when you want me to move the slides forward.
Sure, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, so this presentation is about transition plans and then also about what CDTC has been doing to work on them with municipalities. Next. So this slide just gives a visual representation of the residents in the capital region who have a disability. And this is all kinds of disabilities as people report when they answer the census forms. Next slide. So the Americans with Disabilities Act in Title II applies to government services and says that governments have to ensure that people who have disabilities are not excluded from programs, services, and activities that are provided for people who don't have a disability or for anyone. And pedestrian facilities are an example of a program. Next slide. So under Title II, there are a number of basic requirements, and these are things that really haven't changed since 1990, but it can be good to remind people what they are. You're supposed to designate an ADA coordinator, develop and post an ADA policy statement, as well as a grievance or complaint procedures, and then complete a self-evaluation of current services, policies, and practices. And that's really what we've been working on here in relation to pedestrian infrastructure. And then developing a transition plan is, the transition plan piece is really the plan of how you're going to bring the things that aren't in compliance with the ADA into compliance. And then you're supposed to post, have the name or the position of the official responsible for implementing the transition plan designated. Next slide. So transition plans are required of government entities with greater than 50 employees. Under 50 employees, public entities still have to evaluate their programs for discrimination. You still are supposed to bring things into compliance, but you don't need to have a transition plan that lays out the steps on how you are going to bring everything into compliance. And when we first started working on this, maybe pretty close to 10 years ago now, we had a lot of discussion about police forces. And so that 50 employees is it's all of your employees combined, full and part-time, and does include police. Next slide. So within the transition plan itself, elements that you are supposed to have are public involvement opportunities, specifically for people who have a disability. You're supposed to either develop or adopt existing design standards for whatever it is that you're evaluating. Identify and list the physical obstacles and their location. Describe in detail the methods that you're going to use to make them accessible. And then provide a schedule for making the access modifications, and a reevaluation schedule of, how you're going to evaluate how you're doing on making progress. And if you're not going to be able to fix everything within 1 year, then you're supposed to provide an annual schedule. Next slide. Okay. So when the ADA was adopted, there really weren't standards for sidewalks and pedestrian facilities in the public right-of-way. But there are now, since 2011, there have been these proposed public right-of-way accessibility guidelines that are applicable to new construction and alterations of existing facilities. They are indeed still undergoing the rulemaking process. NISDOT has incorporated them into the highway design manual, so you should have been following them anyways now if you're working on a federal aid project. And just by way of update, the last I heard, which was maybe a month ago from federal highway staff, is that now they're hearing that this summer the final rule should be made or adopted. Next slide. All right, so within a transition plan, you should have for pedestrian facilities some kind of prioritization methodology on how you're going to decide which sidewalk or which curb ramps, well, not curb ramps, which sidewalks or which pedestrian signals or crosswalks are going to be fixed before other ones. You should consider government centers or public services like libraries before other things. But you can also look at pedestrian level of service, where you're getting complaints about inaccessible locations. You can look at your population density, so residences, presence of the disabled community, and you can also look at cost in your prioritization methodology, but you need to specify how you are considering your prioritization. Next slide. And then for monitoring, you should be using the transition plan in an annual planning cycle, and then tracking from your initial inventory. So the transition plan or your self-analysis when you made the transition plan would be your baseline, and consider your transition plan a living document as you make updates or improvements to the facilities. And then always keep in mind that other kinds of changes to the pedestrian environment, adding street furniture or landscaping, can have negative impacts on the accessibility of the pedestrian rights, the pedestrian path. Next slide. Okay, so when we first started working on this topic a number of years ago, we realized from our municipalities that we didn't really know where there were sidewalks even. So we undertook an effort to make a really simple map. Is just presence and absence of sidewalks by side of the street. And so we came up with about 1,225 miles, mostly doing it online. So it has the route number, the road name, the side of the road, the start and end points of like the segment, and the surface type, so asphalt, concrete, brick, slate, dirt, grass, covering something else. And then the length of whatever the length of the segments. So we have already now transmitted all of that data to each municipality with a letter explaining the transition plan requirements. So if there's any question from a municipality about they may not have any sidewalks, which may be why they wouldn't have heard from us. But if you know that they do and they don't have any record of that, you can feel free to let us know and we can retransmit that to them. Next slide. All right, so this is just a map of the sidewalk locations, and the darker lines are the sidewalks and the lighter ones are one of the road networks that we have. So, it shows some clumping areas of where there are sidewalks in the region with many of them in the cities of Albany, Schenectady, Troy, and Saratoga Springs, and Watervliet and Coast. Next slide. All right, so we at CDTC are now actually on our second contract with a consulting firm to work on transition plans for our municipalities. The first one was in early 2020, and then we held a municipal solicitation in April 2020 and in 2021, and we just held another one at the end of 2022. So we've been requiring some kind of in-kind match. Cash match is optional, but staff time definitely, and it's super helpful if there are staff people who can work on like the data collection effort itself for us, but I think it's also can be really helpful for the municipality going forward to have somebody on staff who really understands how the data was collected and what is represented within the data. We are asking municipalities to arrange the public input and provide lists of stakeholders. The consultant will provide a presentation, but the municipality organizes the whatever it is. And then a letter of support from the chief elected official so that we know that there is actually an intent to adopt the transition plan. We've worked with Glenville and City of Saratoga Springs. That's what this is referencing. And then we did work with the City of Albany, which is almost finished. And now we're working, we will be working with Troy, Boston Spot, and Guilderland. Next slide. All right, so I think these next slides are a little bit more on like the data collection effort that like methodology. So once we are working with a municipality, we have been confirming the non-data collection components. So just making sure that they know if they already have a transition plan, like where it is and what was in that, and confirming, who the staff person is who's responsible, that they have their grievance procedure set. Stakeholder meetings. We've been inviting groups focusing on seniors, like senior center types, and then people who have disabilities, which is really a little bit different by municipality. And then if there is anybody at the municipality doing data collection, then we will train them in person on using our methodology that we've developed, and then arranging the public meetings, which can just be, and so we have at times just made it an agenda item on a board, like the city council meeting. And then the image here is, I think all of these images are from the Saratoga Springs project that we have, that is finished now. So this image is from the app that we had that we've been using on tablets. And it's the beginning of the section that was collecting information on the intersections. And so it filters. So if you say there is no curb ramp down at the bottom, then it wouldn't ask you all the questions about, how wide the curb ramp is, or if it has a detectable warning strip. Next slide. I lied. This is actually an image from Glenville. So the data collection points for sidewalks are a simple 1 to 4. This is the same that NISDOT had used in their transition plan a number of years ago. So it considers more than, it considers a number of things, but it's drilled down in the actual entering of the data that the data collection person is putting in is just a 1 to 4. And then curb ramps, really we're looking at detectable warnings and the dimensions and the contrast light on dark or dark on light of the of those. Pedestrian signals, the type of signal that it is, whether it's providing information visually, audibly, or both, and then the access dimensions to it, if there are, if it's a pedestrian activated one. Transit stops only, we're doing transit stops that are near the sidewalk. So if it's a transit stop that's out in a field somewhere, then we're not evaluating it for pedestrian access. But for those that are near sidewalks, we're considering the access dimensions and obstructions to getting to that waiting area and then onto the bus. And then crosswalks is the surface of the crosswalk. We have had a little bit of confusion about, what the definition of a crosswalk is. The vast majority of the time, it's not the paint on the road. So we really aren't evaluating, well, we are because people are interested, but it's really not part of the requirements to have it be marked. And also the paint, deteriorates so quickly. Most of this might be different in other parts of the country, but for us, we're looking at a number of years to bring everything into compliance, and the crosswalk paint deteriorates so quickly that it's on a completely different time scale. Okay, next slide. Okay, so there are multiple questions in our system that are responsive to previous answers, kind of like question logic, if you've ever used that in SurveyMonkey. And we are collecting pictures for the inaccessible elements, which makes it a really huge database, but it is helpful to be able to go back and look at why something wasn't accessible. And it has also been helpful for us, even just within the creation of the transition plan, to be able to come up with some estimates when we are looking for budget estimates of like a percent, an estimated percent of panels that need to be replaced depending on whether it's what the sidewalk score rating was. So the way we've been doing it anyways, results are mappable visually, but we can also pull them out in a tabular format, and it's very useful with more detailed data. Next slide. So this is just an example prioritization methodology pulled from Saratoga Springs, because we're talking about Broadway corridor here. So the first one is facilities and intersections serving government facilities, including schools, and then next, facilities and intersections serving the Broadway corridor. So if you know Saratoga Springs, it's basically saying you're focusing on a commercial corridor, and then healthcare facilities, education sites, and commercial corridors. And then finally, facilities and intersections serving other areas, including parks and historic sites. So each municipality, though, can make up a different prioritization methodology depending on what's going on in their municipality. Next slide. All right, so here's an image of the final data. This is just a screenshotted image from Saratoga Springs's plan. In the key at the bottom, you can see a color gradation thing from like light pink to dark purple, and that's the priority locations. So it's combining all of the priority locations that they're considering to make a priority, and then it's basically like a heat map. So you can see on the map itself. Yeah, thanks, Jen. In the downtown area is like the highest concentration of the things that they wanted to prioritize on. And then the data was queried basically to show the street crossings and the transit stops just solely based on whether they were accessible, like fully accessible, and then inaccessible in some way. But there is a lot more data behind that to tell staff people and what type of inaccessibility that facility has. Next slide. And this is just the zoomed in area for Saratoga Springs. And it has, a lot of symbols on it, but it gives you a quick visual of, where you might get help to see where you might have concentrations of facilities that are inaccessible. Next slide. This is a table that I pulled from their plan, from Saratoga Springs' plan of the block level sidewalk score results. So the 1 to 4 that we have is fully accessible, mostly accessible, partially accessible, and not accessible. Those are the scores for the sidewalks. Thank you. And then we went and queried the data for the percentage of the total miles of sidewalk that were in each of those categories, the length of sidewalk miles, and then the number of blocks. And the number of blocks, the block length can be important when you're looking at the map and just at this data. So if you had like a sidewalk panel that was like missing or like heaved up a foot or something, and it made that one small area, made the whole segment not accessible, you might not have to fix the sidewalk on the entire block. You just might have to fix that one panel. So the budgetary implications of that are less than what it would appear looking at the data. Yeah, next slide. This is just a screenshot of the table, but the point here is just that you can pull the data out by segment in tabular format and sort it. On the right is the high, I think high priority, then down to medium priority. Next slide. And your schedule for access modifications, we have determined that it's okay to use a metric. So like we're going to fix 5 miles of sidewalk segments and bring them into compliance per year, instead of saying, in the year 2035, we're going to do this block and this block and this block and name out each blocks over each year. You're just saying whatever your metric is. But it should be in compliance with what you said your prioritization methodology was, except we have been, and it is okay to specify that you will take advantage of capital improvement projects or private development as they come along and bring things into compliance as part of those projects. And then also bump up the priority of areas that are receiving complaints, specifically complaints of accessibility for people who have disabilities. Next slide. This slide lists the capital region municipalities that have plans with inventories. I know when we first started doing this work, we had been advised to just make a transition plan that didn't have an inventory. Ontario County, I think, is the example that we had been using for that to encourage people to do this. And it basically was just that you made a plan that said that you were going to make a plan. And the idea was that that could help to protect you if the Department of Justice did start to investigate you because it would indicate that you were making good faith effort to move forward with your compliance efforts. So municipalities with adopted plans are Bethlehem and Niskayuna. Those two did work on theirs before we, we didn't assist them in theirs. And then Glenville, Saratoga Springs those are finished, and Albany City, Boston Spa, Guilderland, and Troy are in progress or starting soon. These are just the ones that I know of, though. Next slide.
I think that's the last slide.
Is that-
Carrie.
Super. Okay. Tom, you sent me a question that says, and I didn't see it until after I've lost the context of it. So your question is what is the definition of alterations of existing?
Yes, sorry. Thanks, Carrie. It was one of the initial slides. I think it was, there was new construction or alterations of existing or a trigger.
Yeah. So when the ADA was passed, like before there was standards for sidewalks, there were standards for like buildings and facilities. I don't know if it includes parks, but anyway, like structural facilities, and there are different ones for existing facilities that were existing before the ADA and facilities that were constructed after that. There's different standards. That may have been what that slide was referencing.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions for Carrie about the ADA plans?
I guess is there interest from other communities in the region? There's just not the capacity to do them, or?
Okay, Carrie, do you want to answer that?
Sure. We did a solicitation. So yeah, I guess the answer is yes. There has been interest that we haven't been able to fund. Our last solicitation actually, so we had applications from Boston Spa, Guilderland, Troy, and Clifton Park. And we didn't deny Clifton Park theirs, but we said, depending on how long it takes and how much staff assistance we're able to get out of Boston Spa and Guilderland, because they agreed to provide staff assistance for data collection, we may be able to do Clifton Park. And there was one other municipality that had applied in a previous round that we didn't fund, but it hasn't been like 20 applications each time, and we've only funded one or two.
How many communities are completely missing in this picture? In the CDTC area?
I don't really have in my head a
I'll be
summary
specific. How come Colony isn't somewhere along the way?
Colony was the other town that we had received an application from. I think it was in the second round that we did, and we just didn't have the capacity to do both of the applications that we had received. So that's kind of the specific answer on Colony. And I don't know to what extent, they didn't apply this time around.
Does CDTC track the implementation, or do you basically hand them the tool, be able to see their plan, and then they take it from there?
They're taking it from there. I haven't done any tracking on any of the ones that we've worked on. And I'm not sure about how much progress Bethlehem and Niskayuna have made on theirs.
Thank you.
Schenectady is noticeable by its absence among the larger municipalities. Was there no interest there? I don't think that there's no interest from Schenectady. I've heard
from them a lot on this topic. And they actually had done a transition plan that was of the transition plan that says we're going to do a transition plan variety. I don't know why we haven't received any applications from them.
Okay,
Carrie, I'm not sure if you saw Valerie's question in the chat box. What
Yes.
was the sidewalk discrepancy category indicating?
Yeah, so the sidewalk discrepancy category, we only have that on the Saratoga Springs one. So we had provided a database saying there are sidewalks here, and then when we went out to look at, to evaluate whether they were in how accessible they were or not, some of those segments were actually not there. So it was like a discrepancy in the quality of the data that we had started with, essentially.
If I may add two items that I've added to some of the state's highway safety plan, which is a 5-year plan that's being developed now. One suggestion that I hope will be adopted is that the Safe Routes to School program be extended to community centers and similar type of places where elderly, young people seem to gather and probably need to get there sometimes without driving. We had a very fine presentation from Kingston about their YMCA's program. I think it deserves to be treated with the same program benefits as Safe Routes to School. It's like Safe Routes to After School type of program that they seem to be running. There's another program which I'm aware of, and I know that CDTC is aware of, that's being instituted in Sand Lake, is it? In Rensselaer County. I think some of your staff has met with them. Again, the same thing. People are going to want to bicycle to there. People want to walk there. Get a fine-grained analysis of where the connections are really missing and needed to be resolved. That's one of the elements. The other is many places are being used where road shoulders are being used, or even pieces of road shoulders, even if it's a 3-foot section, particularly when the sidewalks get plowed over by snow. They're being used. I see them. I use them myself now as a pedestrian. The road shoulders and the availability of road shoulders, which sometimes can be marked by as simple as a fog line, should be considered as part of this program.
Thanks, Ivan. I know those are definitely important things from a planning perspective. But for an Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan, it's really only looking at the accessibility of, it's looking at not discriminating against people who have disabilities. So it's only looking at existing facilities, in this case, pedestrian facilities, and making sure that if you are providing them for people who don't have disabilities, that you're also providing them for people who do have disabilities. So if there's a school that doesn't have any sidewalks to it, that is an issue for children to get to the school, but it's an issue for all children to get to the school. It's not discriminating just against the children who have disabilities or their parents. Or anyone else who needs to use the school. So in an ADA transition plan, you're really just looking at the accessibility of existing facilities and bringing those into compliance. What you're talking about, I think, is super important, but it's just not something that goes in a transition plan.
Well, the connections are very apparent. The other day, as I was taking my walk on quite 3 weeks ago, probably, where the sidewalk was completely plowed over, I noticed a guy going there with his motorized wheelchair as well.
Mhm.
It's if you can get the children walking there safely or in less danger, there's a chance that somebody that, for example, is elderly may need the same place as a way of getting places.
I'm just thinking, wasn't there a lawsuit anyways in some place where there's people who were handicapped sued because the sidewalks were not maintained?
In the region or?
No, I think it was more like either statewide or national wide. I think I think maintenance is part of the ADA plan. So
Yeah.
plowing.
Right, so in that final example that Ivan gave, there is a sidewalk that was constructed as a sidewalk and it was made inaccessible by somebody putting snow on it, or not clearing snow off of it. Yeah, so then that is an issue that the snow maintenance should be discussed in the transition plan.
I see snow removal policy is on the program.
Mhm.
And I'm looking forward to hearing that. But I think within the 5-year range of the state safety plan, we're not going to get these things resolved. And snow will keep getting plowed onto the sidewalks, whether they're plowed or not. You can't get across the snow gets plowed on from 2 different sides. I mentioned in my badgering people on the safety plan that I've had experience mountaineering, and some of these corners are an equal challenge. Getting off the sidewalks.
Yeah. We've continued to kind of talk about maintenance, and that's one of the reasons which we'll talk about a little bit in the agenda, why we created the snow removal policy map tool, because it has been kind of like a common topic that's come up every winter. We talk about snow removal and some of the issues. So we do have a question or a comment in the chat from Ed. He said, with respect to jurisdiction, who is responsible for sidewalks generally along state, county, town, other roads? How does that play into planning and compliance? So, I mean, I can answer this, Carrie, it varies from municipality to municipality and from roadway to roadway. So we're actually gonna kind of touch on this in a little bit in a agenda item on snow removal. Any one last question for Carrie before we move on in the agenda? Okay. Well, thank you, Carrie.
Thank you.
Okay. So the next agenda item is an update to the draft 2023-2024 Unified Planning Work Program. So since we last met, the Planning Committee has reviewed the programming recommendations and adopted the draft plan and released it for public review and consultation. So we are currently in the public review and consultation period. Just wanted to highlight some of the changes or new information in this UPWP. On top is the funding. So as you can see, pretty similar funding to the previous year. However, we did receive, and we'll talk about that in the next slide, a Safe Streets for All grant, which will be a regional update to our safety plan and really kind of developing those Vision Zero policies from a regional level. the State Streets for All program is part of the bill, the bipartisan infrastructure law. And this was, you know, a coordinated regional effort to apply, and we were successful in getting the grant from Federal Highway. So it is very exciting for us and the region, and it is a pretty big chunk of funding in our UPWP for this upcoming year. Below are the new planning projects that were selected to be included in the UPWP for this coming year. We talked about what the proposals, how many and which proposals were received through the solicitation. In the end, we chose these 6 projects. So the town of Milton is a town center plan update. The village of Castleton on Hudson is a complete streets and connections plan. Village of Voorheesville is an all access complete streets feasibility study. Albany County is the Broadway flood resilient multimodal corridor study. The town of Rotterdam is Curry Road and Guilderland Avenue multimodal study. And then the Colony Central Avenue West corridor study. So these are, we would say, you know, like a linkage scale and type of study. In addition to these, we are also funding bike skills training for youth. And we are also going to be doing, as part of a technical assistance project, working with the town of Bethlehem to develop some guidance and criteria for setting speed limits related to the new legislation that allows municipalities to lower speed limits to 25 miles per hour. So looking at street typologies and connections and land uses and making some recommendations for how communities might want to set speed limits or go about setting speed limits as this law now allows them to. And just kind of highlighting some of the key points of the Safe Streets and Roads for All program. This is a regional study, and while there were particular communities that had originally applied on their own, and then Federal Highways came back and said, hey, we would like you to, you know, coordinate as a region. So we worked with those specific municipalities, resubmitted, and were awarded. And you'll see, you know, information about those municipalities kind of highlighted in the UPWP, but this project will probably touch on all of the communities in the region. So we are accepting comments and feedback on the draft UPWP. You can review the draft document on the CDTC website. There is a survey that, if you are so inclined, you can take to provide some feedback. We did have a virtual workshop, and that was recorded and is on the website, but we are having an open house here Tuesday, February 28th from 4 to 7. And this will be an opportunity for the public to come in and hear a little bit about the UPWP, ask questions, and view some of the tables on funding and what projects are included. And all comments, if you would just like to kind of send an open-ended type of comment, you can email them to cdtc@cdtcmpo.org. Another new agenda item is the proposed Bridge New York program. So we kind of touched on this at last meeting too. There was a solicitation for bridge projects. And the way this works is that there was a set allocation per county. So we did the solicitation and received a number of proposals. And these are the proposed bridge projects that were programmed at Planning Committee. So these will be in the notes, so you can see some of the details. It's kind of, might be difficult to see this table now if you're here in the conference room, but really programming to make sure that each county had a project that met the allocation, the target that was allocated for them. So as you can see, one bridge in Albany County, a bridge in the city of Troy, one in the city of Rensselaer County, town of Sand Lake. And then in Saratoga County, one in the town of Providence, the Saratoga County Bridge, and then one in Schenectady County. Okay, so now I just want to do a demo of our new snow removal policy map. Can everyone see, does everyone see the screen with the map?
No, we're still seeing your slides.
You are, okay. Do you see it now?
Yeah.
Great, okay. So this tool was created by CBTC staff. Mainly we have Rebecca, who's here, and one of our interns who has left, Elena, and Carrie and some other staff also assisted. So it is on the active transportation webpage on the CDC website. And you'll see it says snow removal policy map. I'll include a link in today's meeting notes. So you'll get a splash page that will just kind of give you some information about the map and how to use it when you click on the link. And then when you're using the map, so let's say you are in the city of Albany and you want to know what the snow removal policy on sidewalks and facilities are, you click on the city or whatever geography you see it there. And it will show you, kind of give a brief summary of the requirements and link to the legal code so you can get more detailed information. So here in the city of Albany, within 24 hours of snowfall, every owner or occupant has a responsibility to clear the sidewalks in front of the property.
Is that shaded area because there's a different entity that's required to clear sidewalks down there, or what's the?
So you're right. So in the city of Albany, or maybe in another city, you might see these smaller geographies in a different color. And this is the case of a business improvement district, or there may be some other type of organization that is responsible for snow or ice removal. So you can find that information. Again, just click the little geography, you go to the little arrow, and the information is right there. Where possible, we link to the legal code. So, you know, town of Colony, the Division of Highways responsible. So it does cover, you know, the whole region. There are even like plan developments where there might be a different rule or ordinance separate from the town or city, where there's an HOA. So we hope that this tool is helpful. We know it doesn't clear the sidewalks, but it is a tool to help people get information, because there's often a lot of questions about who is responsible, you know, how can I, you know, work with my community to get sidewalks and paths cleared. So if anyone, you know, uses this and has questions, definitely let us know. If, you know, you see an opportunity to add or anything to this, definitely let us know. So we hope that this is something that's helpful to everybody.
Cool.
We did get a question in the chat. Says, outside of villages and cities, New York State highway law requires towns to maintain sidewalks on state and county highways, including snow and ice control. I don't recall offhand about villages and cities. Yeah, it varies from community. Snow and ice removal policies vary from community, but generally villages and cities, the property owner is responsible unless you're in a bid or there's an HOA situation, so, and the state generally does not do snow clearing on sidewalks. They have some sort of agreement with the municipality to do that. Okay. Nate asked if the ownership of a sidewalk within DOT right of way turns over to municipality following construction. I'm not it's that always happens. I think that there can be agreements between like a town or village and DOT and who is responsible for maintenance. I don't know if someone from DOT wants to elaborate on that. No, okay. I think it's a case by case basis.
I hate to be a pain in the neck, but sometimes I am. Within the probably 55 years that I've been observing this, the road does get plowed. The side of the road, the shoulder, less so, but pretty consistently as well. Even where there's clearance of the sidewalks, the tendency is for the road plowing to be plowed back on the sidewalks and be impossible to move. It's like a glacier solidifying because of the friction involved. The short-term beneficial thing that can be done is where there is a wide outside lane, and the wide outside lane is not needed for very large vehicles that are completely unusual, or is not needed to speed traffic in a wide outside lane. The municipalities and the state should consider putting in a fog line. If a fog line is put in, let's say giving a 3-foot shoulder or even a 2-foot shoulder, people can use that space. Traffic stays away from it. People can use that space to at least get someplace by foot or even bicycle. So a policy of these road diet projects should be instituted where there are a lot of pedestrian accidents and bicyclist accidents. It's a cheap program to do, and I think it will provide some level of safety during snow times when everybody is kind of trying to do the best that they can.
Yeah.
The other thing is if you can make a little space between the sidewalk and the roadway to store the snow, probably it would be better.
When the wide outside lane was put in on Central Avenue, I know that CDTC staff was arguing with several of us that there should be a fog line put in, even though it was just 3 feet, rather than leaving it as a way of speeding traffic along the outside lane.
Yes, I mean, I would say generally, I mean, it depends on the context, but we haven't necessarily encouraged the use of the wide outside lane where possible because of speeding and safety, but having a line there. So the space is there for vehicles that need it, but, it does.
Well, the
designate
streets are
space
there for vehicles, but there are municipalities trying to put in a 25 mile an hour speed limit. And those vehicles are traveling at 40 miles an hour, maybe more, in the wide outside lane because it's a wide lane.
Right, design is gonna be important in actually
Uh,
getting the vehicles to drive the 25 miles per hour, for sure, yeah.
that- Sorry about commenting the same comment twice the same.
No, it's
meeting.
okay, we need to often be reminded, Tom had a question about the Capstone on Hudson project, I think, asking what the connections aspect of the study are. Is that,
Yes, thanks, Jen. Yeah, I was just curious, connections.
Probably want to connect into the Skodak Island State Park for one.
yep, Skodak Island State Park, was specifically.
Pascagonia Island is the other one up.
Yeah, that was specifically included in their request. I mean, I'll read briefly here. It says develop recommendations for complete streets concepts, managed parking and more pedestrian friendly streets, which have been identified as priorities in the village's comprehensive plan, explore connections between downtown and Skodak Island State Park. And as I recall, it was really about getting people to, some of the different recreation and other transportation multimodal kinds of destinations that are in and around the village.
Well,
So,
they have camping now at the park, so it's
Mhm.
like to get campers maybe to come downtown or something like that. would be good.
Yeah.
So via non-motorized transportation mode, pedestrian bicycle access connection?
yes,
Oh, cool.
yeah. And we haven't worked with Village of Capstone Hudson a lot, so we did a technical assistance project with them, so we're looking forward to working with them on that. We tried to prioritize in our programming communities that we haven't had an opportunity to work with
Mhm.
that, so.
Say the park again. Sorry, Jen.
That's
what was
okay.
What was the
Say that
park?
again?
Yeah,
Skodak Island State Park?
Skodak Island. Thank you.
Sure. Okay, moving on in the agenda, we don't have any definitive information to share about 2023 Bike to Work Day yet. But we are working with the group Capital Streets to partner on this year's Bike to Work Day Challenge. If you're not familiar with Capital Streets, it's a newly formed organization that's looking to do some complete streets and active transportation work throughout the region. And they have some interest in events like Bike to Work. So we're going to partner with them and see how, they may help us be able to expand our program and grow it. When we have a date and more details on the event, we will definitely share them. I just have this empty trail planning slide. We are actually, I don't want to talk too much about this because next meeting, Chris Morris from OPRHP and Dylan Carey from Parks and Trails New York are going to present to the committee on some of the new and ongoing initiatives in trail planning statewide and things that will affect the capital region. So I think there's a lot of good stuff happening that people will be interested in. So I'm not going to talk much on that. I'm going to hope everyone comes back next month to listen to Chris and Dylan. Just a reminder, CDTC maintains the bipartisan infrastructure law webpage on our site. We try to update it with the most up-to-date information as we get it, as new programs are announced, as new guidance is announced, as programs are reopened. So please, if you are interested, check that website for potential funding opportunities. Metropolitan Transportation Plan, as you'll see in the draft UPWP, we are starting the process of updating the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. The next Metropolitan Transportation Plan is anticipated to be adopted in September 2025. And the development of these plans does take us quite a long time because we do a lot of data collection, and we're going to do a lot of public and stakeholder outreach this time, not just at the end, like we have done in the last couple updates, but kind of throughout. And really, we're in the process of developing a regional trends report that will be promoted and used as kind of a baseline for the region for us to kind of look at and see where we're at and where we should be going. We are continuing our New Visions virtual learning series. We had a webinar scheduled. These are getting a little bit more challenging to schedule it each month, as it seems like we started this during COVID when a lot of people were at home and there was a lot of interest in doing webinars and virtual types of things. And as people are kind of getting back in the office and going to meetings, I think it's more challenging to get folks presenting every month. So we did have a webinar lined up for the 22nd. And right now we're going, for the 21st, we're delaying till the 28th, but more information regarding that webinar will be posted to the CDTC website. And the status of planning initiative. So this table will be in the today's meeting notes. And as you can see, it summarizes the status of all of the CDTC funded and supported initiatives that are going on right now. There are some linkage studies that are coming to a close. So the Federal Street Corridor Study and the Rensselaer Waterfront Connectivity Study are both kind of wrapping up. And then we have, and as well as the Village of Manans land use regulations update, that has been completed. And then there are a number that are ongoing or just getting started. As the technical assistance projects, we have a few that we hope to wrap up by the end of March, including the Reconnecting the West Side project in the city of Saratoga Springs, the Riverside Avenue access improvements in the city of Rensselaer, and an East Greenbush natural resource inventory. And CDC is also working with Albany County on a feasibility study for the Albany County Loop Trail that was identified in the Capital District Trails Plan. And then some of the other projects that we're working on, we talked about the ADA transition plan initiative. So with that, in the notes, I am going to include some links for ongoing public engagement opportunities. There's currently a survey open on mobility hubs in the region. The UPWP survey is open, and there are some other projects that have a public feedback opportunity open. So all of that information will be in today's notes, as well as our presentation. Are there any other organization or agency updates that folks want to share?
I'll jump out and say we're going to be having our spring planning and zoning webinar workshop series coming up again. The webinars will run March 15th through May 3rd, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. We're lining up speakers now. We should have 8 sessions. So ones we've already got is a funding workshop. We look to having a workshop on seeker primers for municipal planners. Also one about regulating short-term rentals and pursuing Dan Stolzenberg for small town comp planning. We're also trying to get a marijuana zoning panel as well. And so stay tuned to CDRPC about announcements for that and signing up. There will be no cost to the webinars. And so it'll be pretty straightforward. They'll be on Zoom and they'll be March 15th through May 3rd, every Wednesday at 1 p.m.
Great. Anyone else have an agency or organization update?
May I?
Yep.
Yeah. Hi. Albany Bicycle Coalition, a number of different organizations, Walkable Albany, Capital Roots. We met together to start a new regional organization, also Capital Streets as well as involved. It's called the Capital Region Vision Zero Alliance that we formed to try to amplify the different voices that are out there for reducing traffic violence. And one of the things that we're doing is trying to collect all the different sources of information from around the different counties, that information about things that the public can comment on, road projects like you're talking about here, but also legislative matters, things that are trying to keep track of what's happening in the different city councils and villages, et cetera. So we just had our first meeting last Thursday. We had a really good turnout, and we're hope to keep growing from there. We're trying to get like a diverse groups, not just bicycling and cycling groups, but Whitney Young Health Centers is involved. We've had people from all different kinds of organizations that are involved from different capacities, whether it's public health. We're trying to get more youth groups involved, perhaps in PTAs, et cetera, but we'll see how it develops. And if people are interested, they can contact me at Albany Bicycle Coalition at yahoo.com. Thank you.
And do you mind if we include your email address in the meeting notes?
Yeah, no, that's fine. I'll put it in the chat.
Jen, so I've accepted a position with New York Bicycle Coalition as the bicycle safety director, administering a grant from GTSC along the lines of bicycle and pedestrian safety, education, skills development is one aspect of that, and kind of a train the trainer aspect in terms of working with gym teachers, physical education teachers around the state to help bolster their curriculum with a bicycle safety element. So looking forward to that. And
That's great, Tom. Congratulations.
yeah, thanks.
Yes, welcome back, Tom.
Yeah.
A few things from Cycle Schenectady. We've been notified by the county that they're going to install a number of 12 by 12 pads at various places along the the Mohawk Hudson Bike Trail. And each pad will have a bench and a water bottle filler, fountain, historic information marker, and a repair station. They've got two of those kind of in the western part of town, of the county, which the county maintains. So we're encouraging them, and we will encourage the city to do one or two on its section of trail as well. The Green Market contacted us. The Green Market is by City Hall, and there was a tragic fire a few years ago that killed somebody and wiped out a building. So the Green Market is going to, the city bid actually is going to develop a mini park there, and they're looking to have bike parking. So they asked us for possible designs for bike parking stations, and we've come up with a few kind of modern designs that curved, it's a curved parking slot, and you can convert it by adding an additional part that protects the bikes from the elements. So that will encourage kind of long-term parking even during the days that they have the green market on Sunday and other times as well. Cycle Schenectady is talking about doing a weekly or a bi-weekly slow ride this year for the first time, rather than just a few targeted rides. This will be an ongoing thing. And we've also applied for a CDTC mini grant to have 3 bike rodeos that we'll have along working with the different library branches to get out the word and supply kids. And we'll have the aim is to have a league certified instructor there. That's about it.
Thanks, Art. Yeah, and you'll see in the UPWP that those bike skills trainings were funded, so the information about them is in our UPWP, so.
Right.
Any other updates?
Jen, this is Jen Hogan with the Department of Health. Just that we've added some additional resources to our pedestrian safety toolkit. So we do have our New York, our complicated failure to yield law. So we have a new publication that we did produce with funding from GTSC last fiscal year that's been added to the toolkit. New for this year, we are underway of developing a failure to yield public service announcement. So although PSAP officially concluded on December 31st of 2022, we continue to develop additional resources and move forward with our media buys, thanks to the Governor's Traffic Safety Committee and their funding, until we work with DOT and the team on developing a PSAP 2.0. So we also in the toolkit have a new video, Street Safe Walking with Daisy. And the video shows Wanda, the crossing guard, and her street safe sidekick, Daisy. And they together teach kids in grades K through 5 on the simple rules of the road and how to cross safely. So I encourage you all to visit our page, because we do have some additional resources for all of you.
That's great. Thanks, Jen. Would you be able to send me a link to where I can find all that stuff? I think I know where, but
I will do that. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen. All right, I don't see any other hands. All right. Great.
Motion to adjourn.
We don't have to do Robert's rules, but our next meeting is scheduled for March 14th at 9 a.m., same time, same place. Again, it will have a presentation from Chris at OPRHP and Dylan at Parks and Trails New York. If I don't know if anyone saw the news, Parks and Trails New York has a new executive director. Their director is formerly the executive director from Transportation Alternatives. So, definitely someone with a lot of transportation experience. It'll be interesting to see, what direction that takes Parks and Trails, but they've been a really great partner in terms of trails and complete streets and stuff. So looking forward to hearing from them and all the initiatives and partnerships they have with the state on statewide trail and greenway planning. So yeah. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. Thank you for attending today, and we will see everyone next month. Happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you. Happy Valentine's Day.
Bye. The state is taking trail plan since the Empire State Trail was